Welcome to Next in Queue, the podcast for contact center and customer experience professionals. Next in Queue is brought to you by Happy2, your service team's personal coach, giving them the process, resources, and insights to deliver the perfect customer experience over the phone. Learn more at happitu.com. Now, here's your host, Rob Dwyer.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining yet another episode of Next in Queue. My name is Rob Dwyer, and today I am joined by Daniel Akre, the VP of Global Business Development at Live Exchange. Dan, how are you?
Outstanding. Thank you, Rob.
Oh, thank you for joining the show. So, as you know, I like to kind of dig into the past with all of my guests, and so you're in Reno today, but that's not where you grew up. So tell me where you're coming from.
Yeah, my against my best, wishes, my parents dragged me out of Minnesota when I was at the ripe old age of 3 and moved me to Northern California into the Bay Area. So I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and around the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, well, that was probably a really exciting time to be growing up in the Bay Area, I would imagine. Lots going on there.
Yeah, tremendous growth. It was still relatively kind of new, right? Populations were low, still a bunch of walnut orchards, apple orchards, orange groves, and yeah, it was a pristine, ecosystem back in the day. And then everybody found out how beautiful it was and decided to all move there. No, but it was a great time. Went to high school and swam a bunch, played all the sports, had a great time.
So did you go to UC Berkeley first or Florida State? Because I know you were at both.
Well, interestingly enough, I was a bit of an athlete growing up. And at the age of 12, I started swimming under the tutelage of Nort Thornton, who was our multi-time NCAA Coach of the Year for Cal and United States Olympic coach. And then I became a student under Carl Moore, who was a PhD guru for the athletes at Cal Berkeley. Learned transcendental meditation at the age of 12 and a half. So started early with the brain thing in a highly diverse environment of Berkeley, waving man, polka dot man, naked man, all those things. And then was recruited to a bunch of schools. I was the number 2 breaststroker coming out of high school. So I thought I'd get out of Dodge, and check out a different part of the country. And if I didn't like it, I'd come back. And so I went to Florida State University for my undergrad work and swam for Coach Stafford, John Stafford, who just happens to be the father of the popular quarterback for the Rams.
Wow. And you were, you were kind of a big deal when it comes to swimming. I mean, I know you seem to diminish it a little bit there, but you were pretty accomplished.
Yeah, well, when you do something since the age of 4 years old, you tend to kind of get pretty good at it. And the black line became my best friend, the black line on the swimming pool. I figured out one day that I pretty much swam 1.5 times around the circumference of the globe. Wow. With my training. So I was top 10 in the world for about 4 or 5 years. I was an alternate to our Olympic teams in 1984 and 1988. And really enjoyed it. Had a lot of fun and grew up around and with some amazing talent and personalities and world-class people, as well as athletes and coaches and mentors. And it was a great time.
Yeah. I wonder, every time I meet someone that's been either around really great coaches or been under the tutelage of really great coaches, I wonder, like, what did you take away from that experience that you still use today?
Wow, that's the $1 million question, right? I mean, there's so much that I took away. I think for me, it was, it falls under the umbrella of having a winning attitude, right? Which is strong mental belief in who you are, what you're doing, and visualizing that anything is possible within reason, of course. I'm not going to be an astronaut. I'm not going to be an Olympic track athlete. Okay. But to be able to put your skill sets and your vision and all of your energy in a trajectory that allows for you to actually believe, Rob, that you can be and are the best in the world at what you're doing. And it's kind of a Superman mentality. And it's quite frankly a big reason why athletes who, when they finish their careers, have such a tough time integrating back into the default world, because now you're just like everybody else and go get a job, right? And figure it out. And now you're kind of in with the masses rather than being top 5, top 2, number 1 in what you do. And so, yeah, I think it was just this strong mindset that you can overcome almost anything, and to visualize, leverage meditation, visualization to achieve your dream, and impact those people around you, your family, friends, professional colleagues, etc., and inspire them to achieve better, because, swimming, although it was a strong individual sport, it was also a team sport. So not just as a club, but also in a relay where you're depending on your pals to throw down and swim as fast as they can and break records and change lives. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's really awesome. I have for many years used a little story to illustrate a point about coaching. And I've always said that at some point I wanted to be an Olympic swimmer. And so I hired a coach, and then I swam for the coach and asked the coach what I needed to do to get to the Olympics. And he said, swim faster.
Yeah.
That's not true. The story's not true, but I finally met someone now that I can picture in my mind, and I can be Dan when I'm telling that story.
We can live out, Carl Moore, who is no longer with us, but he was a PhD at Cal. And by the way, Florida State graduate student at the time. Strange, that was our connection, right? So both institutes of higher learning, we had that in common. But, he really allowed for me to understand that we can play out our fantasies and our desires and our wants and needs and dreams through our mind. And transcendental meditation was my gateway to learning how to envision myself in different scenarios, imagining the perfect race, the perfect stroke, etc. And I think people really truly don't understand the power of their own mind and how it integrates into their physical body. And so, yeah, that was, we can do that. And,
Yeah.
and it's pretty cool. He's told me some stories that I remember being on the pool deck, with my fellow athletes and listening to Carl, and he would just go like, no, Carl, you actually need to be in a relationship to have that experience.
Okay. I wasn't expecting us to go there, but we just did. So that's awesome.
very, very, very Berkeley-esque. You know what I'm saying?
Sounds, yes.
What?
Yes.
Wow, that's extreme.
So at one point, you did have to just go get a job, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Eventually the swimming as a career, I guess, kind of that chapter closed. So what was that? You just talked about how that can be difficult for athletes, but what was that first kind of transitionary job for you, and how did that go?
Yeah, great question. Very strong emotions. Thinking back to that, imagine literally blood, sweat, and tears, right? In, guttural, intestinal fortitude, everything you had towards one event, meaning Olympic trials. And I swam 3 events, the 100 and 200 meter breaststroke and 200 individual medley. And not making the team by a very slim margin, 89/100ths of a second, right?
Yeah.
It crushes you, because that's the difference between being an Olympic athlete and going home. And you're in the fastest swim nation in the world, swimming the fastest times in the world. And so FINA regulations only allow 2 swimmers from the United States in each event, even though you could have 5 of the top 10 swimmers in the world. So that's tough, right? So you don't even show up at the Olympics, and you know that if you swam your best race, you'd probably medal. So that messes with your mind a little bit. And so after trials, I drove up to Lake Tahoe with my 12-speed bike, rode around the lake in about just under 5 hours, complete and utter emotional wreck, and just went through full therapy session while I was writing. All of the things that you can imagine when you download, and look back. And so again, I was in my mid-20s, and so I knew my career was over and that I was going to need to move on. But it was highly therapeutic for me to do that, because I established in my mind that was going to be it, and I was going to go and kill it in the business world. And I promptly re-engaged my career with a company called ADP, Automatic Data Processing, payroll tax related. Started selling in the Bay Area, headquarters out of Emeryville, and then moved to Bank of America Business Services, and just kind of dominated with each position. And of course, back in the day, headhunters, you were top producer, they were calling you weekly. And I wound up working for Dun & Bradstreet Software, selling enterprise solutions, competing against Bon, SAP, Oracle, at the time PeopleSoft, maybe some will remember that. But yeah, and then got a phone call after we were sold to a Canadian company. DBS was sold to a Canadian company, and then joined the BPO ranks with Ray Hipp, who recruited me to help reposture a company called ITI Marketing in the telemarketing space. And I thought he was nuts, because I'm like, you're the guys who are calling me and interrupting my dinner, selling me a long distance. And so we worked the math problem out, and being a young guy with, a couple of kids, that was very attractive to me.
Yeah.
So that's when I made my move. Yeah, 1996, I believe it was. Yeah.
Did you find it challenging to move industries, or was the sales still the sales, and not really much of a challenge, other than just continuing to perform?
Well, it's always a challenge, right? But human beings and our behavior are relatively consistent over hundreds of years, right? Our wants, our needs, our desires. Everybody wants to be appreciated and desired, wanted, and needed, and to be felt valued and appreciated and have a voice within their organization. And, to be honest, if you can find and identify the problem and you have a real solution, you just explain the feature, advantage, benefit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have as many conversations as you can with key people, whether it's a stakeholder or a decision maker or an executive sponsor, and business gets done. So yeah, it's the value proposition. It was kind of weird in the telemarketing space. We called it telemarketing back then. It's the BPO, contact center, call center world today. But it was highly commoditized, right? And so, yeah, it was very price oriented, which is how much per hour, how much per minute. So you actually won based on price a lot. But as the industry started to mature, it was a lot of value add. You weren't just picking up, talking up, and hanging up anymore. You were actually having meaningful discussions with the customer and driving the customer journey. And then we've come so far, right, with the technology in the space now, which is completely different complexion than it was back in the late 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, it really strikes me, that evolution, right? I mean, I think I've talked to some people who honestly, they hate the term BPO, right? Particularly because of the outsourcer part of BPO. And they really prefer something along the lines of partner, because of exactly what you said, that evolution. Like, sure, at one time you may have just been finding somebody that can answer the phones or make phone calls, or both potentially. And what we've seen in the industry is that those partners now sometimes do a whole heck of a lot more than that. And sometimes are really driving those insights back into the business, saying, hey, if you do this differently, you can save a lot of money or make more money. And a lot of times people are reaching out to those partners now for their expertise in something, not just, well, I need people to answer the phone or to make phone calls.
Yeah, our buying habits and our thought process and what we value has changed tremendously over the last number of decades. And so, we're dealing with Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen X, and by the way, we got about how many millions of baby boomers still around hanging out. And so everybody wants something different. And we want it yesterday, we want it now. And however we can facilitate that, and whether that's through chat, email, text chat, AI, live voice, multiple languages, multiple dialects within those languages. I don't care what geo, just so long as I have the right person on the right program at the right time, talking to the right person, right? All of those key things, but it's just really driving high quality conversations with customers to either help them resolve whatever challenges that they have in as little time as possible, and creating a great experience and interface with that customer, or driving net new revenue opportunity, either organically or with a brand new customer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all a value sell, what we value. Important, not important. Good, not good. So there's a lot of, as you know, in our space, just a lot of white noise. Just you see it a lot on LinkedIn, and it's just maddening how everybody just wants to beat everybody to the punch with their marketing hyperbole. And it's very tiring, people. So we know what you're up to. You're not cutting a new path. It's just a different path.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, right, there are dozens upon dozens upon dozens of people in any given niche within, whether it's the contact center business or any other business, right? It's finding the partner that's right for you. If you're looking for a partnership or a vendor or a supplier, whatever you want to call it, because there are those little differences. And so it's just a matter of finding, okay, well, what fits for us? And sometimes it doesn't mean that, you're working with the newest cutting edge technology, or that you're, using something that nobody else is using. You're just using what's right for your organization.
Yeah, we've been selling people, process, and technology since I was born, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's unique and everybody's better than everybody else. And, it's very challenging when you have 400 BPOs, that's just a random number. I know it's greater than that, but just 150 BPOs that are well known. And I think most people probably only know about 20. And
Yeah.
I work with some advisor, broker, value-added resellers, and these guys have been around the block, 20 plus years in the space, using and leveraging those types of professionals are an excellent idea because they help kind of narrow the field with regard to who would be best to leverage in that particular environment. Whereas you have internal teams that just like, where do we start? With RFP, RFI, RFQ, do I send it out to 150, 10, and then you have internal stakeholders who own a fiefdom, who, they don't want to let go of control. And so it's this big struggle of like, do we outsource or should we keep it in-house? And do we buy or build, or do we do something unique like Gig CX, or now remote work is like a huge thing now. And so, it's going to be it is already a multi-billion-dollar space. And so what are the legalities of that? How can I leverage that? Will it be meaningful for me in my organization? So there's a ton of questions, and there's, quite frankly, a ton of answers. You just got to be talking to the right people. And usually experience kind of helps to vet that out. And people who've been around the block, been there, did that, right? And so, yeah. A lot of questions, a lot of answers. I don't have many. I'm not that smart. I'm not that smart,
Well, you know how to have a conversation, and that's the important part, right? I mean,
yeah, I just, I'm probably like everybody that's listening to this right now. I have a lot of questions myself.
yeah, well, and I think we're at, I don't want to say a turning point, because I don't know that it's a turning point. And if history is any guide, sometimes we think that we're on the brink of something, and it takes a whole heck of a lot longer, or it just doesn't pan out than we think it does. But I look at a couple of different things happening, particularly in the US space, although I don't think it's relegated just to the US. But the first is just the nature of work and workers, and how a lot of people are approaching things differently. And you mentioned gig work, and we can talk about that a little bit more, because that's certainly a growing piece of the puzzle when it comes to sourcing talent. And then I think, and this is really wide ranging, but there are a ton of different applications of AI and machine learning and automation that are out there for people to kind of change how they've done things in the past, to be maybe more efficient, to maybe, put different kind of work on the people in their organization so that they don't have to do some of the low level work. There are just a lot of different things going on out there. And I think both of those, particularly in the contact center space, are having a really interesting impact to the way that people are doing business today, or look at how are we going to do business going forward.
Yeah, no question, Rob. Buyers, the consumer, have the proclivities of the current consumer are just changing dramatically. Like I said, everybody wants it, this minute. Now I want a resolution. I want my product now. So Amazon started serving that up with 24-hour delivery, right? Fast food started that how many decades ago with, get your burger within 5 minutes. Domino's Pizza delivering pizzas within the hour. I think it was, right? An hour. And if you didn't,
Yeah,
if
I
it
think
wasn't an
so.
hour, then you get your pizza for free. Like now. And it's just, we're so overly indulged, right, in the US. It's so, and if any of you, by the way, listening to this have been abroad to any kind of third world country, you'll realize that more than 3 forks in your house is probably too much, right? Because it's just like, wow, how many plates do I have? How many shoes and shirts do I have? This is ridiculous. Anyway, it's funny because we're so demanding. So the BPO world was telling the enterprise, why do you want to own an employee when you can outsource it to us and we'll do all the work? Well, interestingly enough, as things change and evolve and grow, the gig CX world is asking the BPO world, why do you want to own the employee? Why don't you source it to a gig worker who gets to work wherever, whenever, and for however long you need them? And there are 56 million human beings out there right now who want to do that. They want to work whenever they want. They want to work from wherever they want, and they want to work however long they want to work. And they bring them their best selves to the table every time they work, rather than being hired and being told what to do, what brand to represent, how to walk in lockstep to our culture. And I'm just going to tie you to the desk. The pandemic forced us to work remotely, so organizations are struggling to, are we going to bring everybody back? Are we going to be hybrid, remote only, or a combination of remote and on-site, right? There's the $1 million questions of, how are we going to treat these people? And I think human beings intrinsically, when I say human beings, it doesn't matter what color skin we have. It doesn't matter what religion we are. It doesn't matter, what gender we are. We have wants and needs, and we want independent, control over our lives. And so if we want to stay home longer with our children and our pets, or we want a hobby where, maybe it's painting or collecting chickens, I don't know what it is, but now my quality life, the enterprise relates it to EQ, right? The enterprise quotient, or the employee quotient. Well, we call it GSAT, which is the satisfaction of a gig worker that allows for them to accelerate in their lifestyle. And they get to opt into the work, and which is a fantastic methodology, right? Because now I get to work for whomever I want. I get to be a brand ambassador. If I want and like Nike and I have 20 different shoes from Nike, I can go work for Nike. And I can only work, a couple hours a day or maybe 20 hours a week. But it's a true brand ambassador, right? I already have knowledge in that space and for that brand, and they're opting into that. They're not being told what to do. They're opting into it. They're raising their hand saying, I want to do that.
Yeah, it feels like there has definitely been a shift brought on by the pandemic. And you mentioned, right, companies are still struggling with, how do I go back? Do I go back to in office? Do I do a hybrid thing? Do I stay remote if they weren't already remote? And I don't know that a lot of them have figured that out yet, but then they're also running into, hey, I may just be struggling to find people. And I think that causes you to think about, and there have been times in the past where, okay, maybe you struggled to find people, unemployment was really low, and so you had to come up with new creative ways to come up with enough people to take care of your business, whatever that business was. And it seems like we're there again. The difference, I think, compared to a lot of other times where we've seen this, is that the nature of the work, coupled with the technology that is available and the widespread internet that is available, allows us to do things that 15, 20 years ago, we probably couldn't do. Just, it wouldn't be possible. And today there are so many more options because of just where we are from a technology standpoint.
Yeah, this has kind of changed the game, hasn't it?
It has.
Right? I mean, if you had asked me back in 1981 that we would have these and that I could do all of the things that I could do on this, I would have told you you were like living in Star Wars land. There's no way, man. There's no way. Like I can talk to multiple human beings, at a touch of a button on a quick call, FaceTime, what? It's just technology has accelerated so quick. And it's given us the opportunity to engage our friends and our family and our colleagues and the businesses that we do business with so much more exposure. And again, and now it's gotten to the point where it's kind of overkill, right, Rob? Because God, there's so much white noise. TikTok, really? I don't know if I'm like everybody else, but you watch one cool video where somebody throws a ball and it hits somebody else in the head and you laugh and you go, all right, I got to see more of this, and you flick it. It's so stupid. But then you end up spending 30 minutes watching this stuff and you're like, I am such a Nimrod. What am I doing? I'm just wasting my day, right? 10, I don't care if it's 10 minutes of watching this stuff, but if you're interested in human behavior at all, it can be pretty addictive. And it's, human beings, we're very entertaining, with our behaviors. And so, but yeah, Rob, the technology allows for us to engage differently. And so the enterprise has responded with touch points. You want to text us? Great. You want to email us? Perfect. Want a phone call? We'll take your call and we'll call you back. Perfect. And so we're trying to, make those experiences as good as possible for the consumer and the people that want to spend money with our brand. And so we want to make that as easy as possible, right? Because there's so much competition out there. They can just click, flip, and I'm off to, company number 2 or brand number 2. I can spend my money so many different ways. So we're still trying to attract eyeballs and interest with product and service. But you know what? And you said it earlier, finding the right people for the right program at the right time is a huge challenge right now. We have all been listening to the Great Resignation, the Great Reshuffle. And it's not about finding talent just in your geo anymore. People, the world is flat. You can find that talent anywhere in the world, literally. You can find people speaking clear English over in the UK. You can find them speaking clear English in the Philippines and India, even in Colombia, Canada. The globe pretty much speaks good English, and I can get different rates within those particular geos because the cost of living is different. Or better yet, I can stay right here in North America where I have over 75 different languages, and the world has come to live here just in the United States. And so I can find native Asian speakers, Latino speakers. Yeah, it's crazy, right? The amount of talent resource I have just within, multiple geos just here in North America. So yeah, it varies from organization to organization with regard to their ability and desire and wantingness to provide those resources for their customers.
When I think about all of this, the one thing that I'm in the business, right? So I feel as guilty about it as I think anyone does. But I wonder sometimes if we're too reliant, though, on the technology and the channels. This is the thing that sometimes strikes me is we've got all these channels. Right. Used to be you had to make a phone call or you had to visit in person, and that was or you could write a letter. These were your channels, right? Handwritten, over the phone, or in person, face to face. And now we have all of these channels, and organizations are trying to manage to all of these preferences. And I wonder how how many businesses are struggling because they're trying to meet everyone everywhere instead of just focusing on how do I deliver really good experience on these maybe limited channels. And maybe you can't at me on Twitter, or maybe, you can't text us, but you can do these other things. What have you seen in that? Because you've worked with all kinds of companies for years and years, and you've seen this evolution. Do you see that ever, or am I just overly concerned about that?
Yeah, no, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but when I was growing up, we had 3 stations. We had ABC, CBS, NBC, and UHF. And you actually had to walk over to the TV and turn the channel. And when you're talking about channels, well, guess what? Now, if anybody has, satellite or cable, what do you have? Like 400 channels now? It's ridiculous. It's total overkill. But now I have choices. So the industry mirrors that, right? Where you got to provide the choices in order to remain competitive. Here's the challenge: is everybody thinks that just because I have the option to text the company I do business with, that it's going to be seamless, and that it's going to be simple and easy to use, and it's going to be whiz bang, and I'm going to get it done. Whoop, disappointment. AI wasn't what we thought it was going to be when it first launched, and it's still not what it needs to be, because I still get I don't understand you. It's like it's just like Siri. Siri's like, I don't understand you. It's like, and then we get frustrated, and then we bail on Siri, and we bail on voice, right? Or we get an undertrained new rep on the phone from the Philippines who is apologizing from here till tomorrow about the fact that they can't help us, and you're a half hour into the call and you're still not resolved. So everything is still imperfect. Whether it's technology or whether it's the human asset. So we continue to grow in these spaces, and the ones that are winning the day are the ones that are creating great experiences within those channels. And some of them are not thinking that maybe I need to fully develop that channel before I expose it to my users. But people are just racing just to offer it. So then they offer it, yeah. and they're failing. It's just like, Rob, it's just like the US BPOs or contact centers, call centers that blew over to India in the early 2000s. And that was an experiment just gone wrong, right? Because they didn't understand our culture. They didn't understand a lot of what we said. We didn't understand a lot of what they were saying. And it failed in a lot of ways. That's why we, onshored a lot of the stuff we sent offshore. And it was, in many cases, a fully mitigated disaster, when we went to Asia. But we kept the technology support piece, or the back office, the non-voice stuff over there. And we grew that by leaps and bounds. Because let's be honest, the call center, contact center, BPO space has been chasing cheap labor since day one. That's why we went abroad, cheap labor. How can I get the most educated, articulate, well-spoken talent that I can get at the cheapest cost?
Yeah.
And so some of us, some of the organizations sold out. Some of them maintain high quality standards. Some of them launched excellent channels only after it was tested and proven. Others didn't. They just raced to provide it, and then they failed miserably, and they created really upset customers, and they went elsewhere. So yeah, it's still underdeveloped even today. So.
Well, I think, right, as long as organizations are being thoughtful about why they do things, then hopefully they'll make the right decisions for their business, whether that's am I outsourcing something? Am I employing a new technology? Am I employing 5 new technologies? Am I opening a new channel? I think it's just very important that you understand your business and your customers, and you understand very clearly the reasons that you're going to make a decision and what the impacts of that decision making is. And if you can do all that and you're okay with the trade-offs, because inevitably there will be trade-offs, then you can be comfortable with that decision. I think a lot of people, they'll just rush to like, I gotta keep up. There's this new stuff out there.
Yeah, but in the meantime, you're going to call an airline to book your travel direct, and you're going to be put on hold for 35 minutes. And then you're going to call your big bank that you bank with, and you're going to talk to an inept customer service representative who can't help you and he still needs to transfer you and can't answer your question because they think somebody else will. And then you end up being transferred 2 more times. Crazy, crazy. You would think that we're past this, but we're not. We're still growing. We're still learning. And you know, I want to fit this in because it's important. It's because the enterprise is going out and hiring people because they need a butt in a seat. They do. They need a human being answering that call, and they're struggling to get the right people, especially during hard to staff shifts. If you're a 24/7 operation, how do you get a competent, capable, well-educated person working between the hours of 9 p.m. and 5 a.m.? How about seasonality, call volume spikes, you know, just all of these problem areas that the BPO and the enterprise are experiencing on a regular basis. This is where gig CX is filling that gap, because now I can have skilled labor, on-demand labor available 24/7. Again, working whenever you need them for however long you need them. And it doesn't matter where they are. And these people, here's the beautiful thing that people need to understand with gig CX, is that these people are opting into the work. They're saying, I'm going to work maybe a 9 to 5 job, but I need to make an extra income because I have 2 kids I'm raising, but I don't want to leave the house for that next job. Or I want to work 2 shifts for 2 different companies, and I want to stay home fully remote. And I have 2 kids and a dog, and that's important. I'm prioritizing that in my life. That's important for me. I do not want to spend 4 hours of my day on a commute in a plane, train, or an automobile, hustling and bustling, and being fully bored at work, having to spend money on lunches as well. And then, oh gee whiz, gas prices the way that they are. Now I'm spending literally $40 a day just in my commute. Is that crazy? Yeah. That's crazy, right? Because in some metro areas, the gallon of gas now is like $6, almost $7. Yeah. Crazy. So yeah, people are just no, and hell no, I don't want to do that anymore. And so gig allows for them to have the flexibility of hanging out in their own home, no commute, no Charlie in the Chocolate Factory personalities at work, Joe Cool hanging around the water fountain, Gina the gossip, just no more toxic work environment. I get to bow out of that. Thank you very much. And yeah, I get to make the money I want to make. I get to work when I want to work, and I get to work for the brands and the companies that I want to work for. And man, I do it with such enthusiasm because this is my main area of earnings. And people, there are 56 million people out there that are doing it. And just with our organization, here's a quick plug, Live Exchange, we have over 150,000 people within our network ready to work for you, ready to go. Saying, you need a particular gender, you need an age group, you need a education level, a skill set, a unique skill set, a particular language and dialect. We can source that within our network. And if for any reason we can't find it, we go out and find it for you. Cool.
Yeah, it brings me to, so I wanted to ask you, I mean, you were with, what was it, UNI Partners for a long, long time. Yeah. And then it hasn't been, more than a couple of years, I think, that you've been with Live Exchange. Is that right?
Actually, I came aboard LiveX in December of 21.
Okay. So I'm curious what it was about what LiveX was doing that you were like, oh, okay, right? Because you clearly had you I see sometimes when I look at people's career growth, you can just see, okay, well, they've moved around, or maybe they just don't move very often. And I think that has a lot to do with the company they're working with, but also their personality and kind of the role that they're in. And you worked for quite a few different places, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm here, and I've kind of settled in, and then all of a sudden you've got this change again. So what drove you to make that change?
Yeah, I was actually featured on the front cover of the business section of the San Francisco Examiner. And the title of the article was Job Hopping in the 90s. And they compared me, where I would stay aboard for 2 years, I'd dominate, and then I'd get hired for a better paying job and a different title for another organization, versus my dad, who spent 35 years with Pac Bell, right? Member of the union, union steward. And so all of those people who are interested, you can find me on Google, I think, if you find that way back in the day. Crazy. But what I'm finding is that, when I worked for BPOs or the call center space, I'm going to try and stay away from that acronym because you hate it.
Not me. I just said some people. It's not me, but I've heard some people be very very forceful about how they feel about that.
Sure. Yeah. I think we all have our own unique sentiments with that, good, bad, and indifferent.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was indifferent back in 2004, because look, I had clients that wanted to, have a center in maybe Corpus Christi, Texas, or maybe they wanted, a location abroad somewhere in a favored travel destination, whatever, and different languages and different skill sets, and they require different technology. And when you work for brick and mortar locations back in the day, you were limited greatly by what you could offer. And we had some Spanish, but we couldn't offer full language capability, and certainly not 100, 200 or more people in that particular space. And so I kind of figured it out pretty quickly that I'm doing all the heavy lifting. So I started UNI Partner in 2005, whereby we were an advisory, or I was an advisory, going after corporate American, logos, and sourcing them to some of the largest BPOs on our planet. And my first transaction, and of course, Rob, everybody thought I was crazy. Oh, you're a broker, or you're an advisor? Good luck on that. I was a bit of a maverick, I would say. And guess what happened? I brokered a $20 million deal between Sprint and Teleperformance USA 6 months into it, working out of my pajamas and slippers in my upstairs office, alone, by myself. There you go. So I'm that. I was a gig worker back then. It wasn't a term that we used. And so I've been working at home ever since. And so I accelerated in that space pretty significantly. I was one of the few, if not, I think the only one, that was really starting to do that back in the day, and highly criticized and, judged, but then all of a sudden now, fast forward, how many advisors, brokers do you have in the space? Just way too many to count. And they're all doing different things. And so part of the reason I joined Live Exchange is we're just cutting an entirely new path. And this is new language. This is a brand new, valid, proven channel per se, right? Where it is changing. It's already changing the industry. Mm-hmm. Where I don't have to, if I'm the enterprise or the contact center, I don't have to own the employee. Yet I can still control and manage the outcomes and the productivity. I got complete oversight and control, and I don't have any of the operational expense, the recruiting, the vetting, testing, the onboarding, the background checks. I don't even have to do the payroll. Lime Exchange does all of that.
Yeah.
Yet I get to oversee the productivity of that particular human asset or assets for my client. So it's an augment to, not a replacement of what the enterprise and the contact centers are doing today. We're just a complement via a full white label pure play. And we're providing the labor and the technology that enables that labor for those people to be able to work for you on your platform. It's damn near crazy. Many call it brilliant, and I would agree with both of those.
Well, of course you would. That makes sense. Well, yeah. If someone wanted to get in touch with you, aside from LinkedIn, is there any place better than LinkedIn for them to reach you?
Well, you can reach me at via email at dakre@liveexchange.com. You can find me, of course, as Rob just said, on LinkedIn under Daniel Akre. You can find me under Twitter at Daniel Akre. Gee whiz. And I won't give my number out because you know how that goes.
And are you on TikTok?
In a different capacity, yeah. Yeah, in my other world, I'm also an author of 2 books, but it has nothing to do with what we're talking about today. Yeah.
Okay. And are you taking up painting or raising chickens by chance?
Believe it or not, there's 23 million people that are collecting and raising chickens in the United States. 23 million people. Crazy. Yeah.
So are you one of those 23 million? This is what I'm asking.
No. Actually, my hobby is working around the yard and flowers. I know it's crazy, but I love my flowers, and I love color, and I take little pictures of them and I put them on my Facebook page. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And then you do a TikTok. I'm sure that's how that works. I mean,
I got to be honest, I'm super inactive with TikTok, people. It's not my, dealio. So
okay, well, you know what they'll say. They'll just call you old. It's fine,
Call me old. If I look old, I don't know. I think I'm hanging in there though. I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah, you're doing all right.
I'm gonna stay in shape.
Dan, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me today. And we'll make sure that everyone can reach out to you on the liner notes. So thank you very much.
Yep. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. Great chat.